December 24th, 1974. Madison Square Garden was transformed into something magical. Thousands of Christmas lights hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the famous arena. A giant Christmas tree stood in one corner, decorated with ornaments donated by children from across New York. The usual smell of sweat and liniment was replaced with the scent of hot chocolate and cinnamon. But the boxing ring in the center remained the same. Canvas stretched tight, ropes freshly tightened, the spotlight waiting to illuminate whoever stepped into that sacred space. Muhammad Ali stood in the makeshift dressing room backstage, adjusting his red and white trunks, Christmas colors, chosen specifically for this charity exhibition. At 32 years old, he was the heavyweight champion of the world again, having reclaimed his title from George Foreman in Kinshasa just 2 months earlier. The Rumble in the Jungle had proven he was still the greatest. Tonight was supposed to be simple. A 3-round exhibition match against a local contender, followed by a meet and greet with sick children from various hospitals. The proceeds would go to the Children's Cancer Foundation. Ali had done dozens of these events. Show up, put on a show, shake some hands, make some kids smile, go home. But tonight will be different. Tonight, Muhammad Ali would face an opponent he couldn't beat with his fists. "Champ, we got a situation," Angelo Dundee said, walking into the dressing room with an expression Ali had never seen on his trainer's face. It wasn't worry about a fight or concern about an opponent. It was something deeper, something that made Dundee look 10 years older. "What kind of situation?" Ali asked, immediately focused. "There's a kid out there, Tommy Sullivan. He's 12 years old. Leukemia. Terminal. The doctors gave him maybe 2 weeks." Dundee paused, his voice catching slightly. "His wish, his dying wish, is to box with you. Not meet you. Not shake your hand. He wants to get in the ring with Muhammad Ali and box." Ali stopped adjusting his trunks. For a moment, the only sound was the distant roar of the crowd filling the arena. 20,000 people waiting for a show, expecting entertainment. They'd paid good money to see the greatest boxer in the world perform on Christmas Eve. "Where is he?" Ali asked. "In a wheelchair, ringside. He's wearing boxing gloves. His mom made him a robe. It says Tommy the Tiger on the back." Dundee's voice cracked. "Champ, the kid weighs maybe 70 pounds. He can barely lift his arms. But he's asking, no, he's begging, to get in that ring with you." Muhammad Ali looked at his trainer, then at the mirror, then back at Dundee. "Cancel the exhibition match." "What? Cancel it. Give the other fighter his money anyway, but cancel the fight. Tonight, I'm boxing Tommy Sullivan." Tommy Sullivan had been fighting since he was 9 years old. Not in a ring, in hospital beds, in treatment rooms, in the endless war against the cancer that was eating him from the inside. He'd endured chemotherapy that made him vomit for days, radiation that burned his skin, surgeries that left scars across his small body. And through it all, he'd watched Muhammad Ali. His hospital room was covered with Ali posters. Ali fighting Liston. Ali with his fists raised in victory. Ali's face, confident and defiant, staring down at Tommy from the walls as if to say, "Don't quit. Champions never quit." Tommy had watched the Thrilla in Manila on a small TV in his hospital room. He'd watched Ali take punishing blow after blow from Joe Frazier, watched him refuse to quit, watched him dig deeper than anyone thought possible and find a way to win. "That's what I'm going to do," Tommy had whispered to his mother that night. "I'm going to fight like Ali." But the cancer was winning. 3 days ago, the doctors had delivered the news that every parent dreads. There was nothing more they could do. Take him home. Make him comfortable. Let him have whatever time remained. Tommy's mother, Margaret Sullivan, a single mom who worked 2 jobs to pay medical bills that would never be fully paid, asked her son what he wanted to do. "I want to box with Muhammad Ali," Tommy said without hesitation. Margaret tried to explain it was impossible. Muhammad Ali was the most famous athlete in the world. You couldn't just ask him to box with her dying son. But Tommy wouldn't let it go. He wrote a letter, his handwriting shaky from medication, explaining that he didn't want to just meet Ali. He wanted to fight with him, to know what it felt like to be in the ring with the greatest. Through a series of miracles, a sympathetic nurse who knew someone, a phone call to Angelo Dundee, and Ali's own generous heart, Tommy's letter reached the champion. And Ali, who never said no to a sick child, invited Tommy to the Christmas Eve exhibition. But Tommy didn't just want to watch. He wanted to fight. The announcement came over the loudspeaker, and 20,000 people in Madison Square Garden fell silent. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice echoed through the arena. There has been a change to tonight's exhibition. The heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad Ali, would like to invite a very special guest into the ring. Ali walked out first, wearing his robe, the Christmas lights reflecting off the sequins. The crowd erupted, but there was something different in his eyes tonight, something more serious beneath the showmanship. Then came Tommy Sullivan. His mother pushed his wheelchair down the aisle, and the crowd's cheers turned to gasps and then to something like a collective sob. Tommy was impossibly small in his wheelchair, his body frail, his skin pale. But he was wearing boxing gloves, red, Everlast gloves that looked comically large on his thin arms. His robe, homemade from red fabric with Tommy the Tiger stitched on the back in white letters, hung loose on his skeletal frame. But his eyes were burning with something that made grown men in the audience weep. His eyes said, "I'm a fighter. I'm here to fight." Ali met them at ringside. He knelt down, so he was eye level with Tommy, and the two just looked at each other for a moment. Champion and challenger. The greatest boxer in the world, and a 12-year-old boy with weeks to live. "You ready to fight me, Tommy?" Ali asked, his voice carrying through the microphone. "Yes, sir," Tommy said, his voice weak but steady. "I'm ready." "You sure?" "I'm pretty tough. I beat George Foreman. I beat Joe Frazier. I beat them all." "I know," Tommy said. And then, with a smile that broke hearts across the arena, "But you ain't beat Tommy the Tiger yet." Ali laughed, a genuine, delighted laugh. "You're right. I haven't. Well, let's see what you got." What happened next would become one of the most powerful moments in sports history. But nobody watching could have predicted just how far Muhammad Ali was willing to go. Two of Ali's cornermen gently lifted Tommy Sullivan from his wheelchair. His legs couldn't support his weight, so they carried him up the steps and through the ropes, setting him down carefully in the center of the ring, holding him upright. Ali took off his robe and handed it to Angelo Dundee. He wore his trunks and boxing shoes, but he wasn't in fighting stance. He wasn't bouncing on his toes. He was standing still, waiting, his hands at his sides. "Okay, Tommy," Ali said loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Show me what you got. Hit me with your best shot." Tommy lifted his right arm, the movement clearly causing him pain, and threw a punch at Ali's midsection. It barely connected, had no force behind it, was more of a tap than a punch. But Ali's reaction made the crowd gasp. The champion staggered backward dramatically, his eyes wide, his mouth open in mock shock. "Oh no," he yelled. "He got me. This kid is strong." Tommy grinned, the first real smile his mother had seen in weeks. "Come on, champ," Ali said, backing up against the ropes. "You got me on the ropes. Keep hitting." Tommy, supported by the cornermen, threw another punch, then another, each one barely landing, each one taking every ounce of strength the boy had. And with each punch, Ali sold it like he'd been hit by a sledgehammer. He bounced off the ropes. He wobbled. He covered up like he was in real trouble. The crowd understood what was happening. This wasn't a fight. This was something more. This was Muhammad Ali, the man who'd stood up to the U.S. government, who'd defeated every challenger, who'd proven time and again that he was the greatest, giving a dying child the gift of feeling strong, feeling powerful, feeling like a champion. "I'm in trouble now," Ali yelled, his voice carrying the same drama he'd used in real title fights. "This kid is too much for me." Tommy threw one more punch, the hardest he could manage, and it glanced off Ali's shoulder. Ali immediately dropped to one knee, his head bowed, his glove touching the canvas. The referee, who'd volunteered for this event and was wiping tears from his eyes, began the count. 1, 2, 3. The crowd picked up the count, 20,000 voices counting together. 4, 5, 6. Tommy stood in the center of the ring, held up by the cornermen, his chest heaving with exertion, his face glowing with something that transcended his illness. For this moment, he wasn't a dying child. He was a champion who just knocked down Muhammad Ali. 7, 8, 9. Ollie looked up at Tommy from his knee, and their eyes met. An understanding passed between them. A connection between two fighters. 10. He's out. The arena exploded. People were standing, cheering, crying. The referee raised Tommy's arm in victory. The ring announcer's voice boomed. The winner by knockout, Tommy the Tiger Sullivan. But Muhammad Ali wasn't done. Ali stood up slowly, making a show of being dazed and defeated. He stumbled over to Tommy, who was still being held upright by the cornerman. Then he did something nobody expected. He removed his championship belt. Not a replica, not a promotional belt. His actual WBC heavyweight championship belt. The one he'd won back from George Foreman in Kinshasa. The belt that represented everything he'd fought for, everything he'd sacrificed for, everything he'd lost and reclaimed. Tommy, Ali said, and his voice was no longer the showman's voice. It was quiet, serious, real. You just beat the heavyweight champion of the world. And when you beat the champion, you become the champion. This belt is yours now. He wrapped the championship belt around Tommy's tiny waist. It was absurdly large, going around the boy almost twice. But when Ali clasped it in place, something happened. Tommy Sullivan stood straighter. The cornerman felt him support more of his own weight. Now listen to me, Ali said, leaning close, his microphone still on, so the entire arena heard. This belt don't make you a champion. You were already a champion before you stepped in this ring. You know what? Tommy shook his head, tears streaming down his face. Because fighting ain't just about throwing punches. It's about refusing to quit when everything says you should. It's about standing up one more time when you've been knocked down. It's about having heart. And you, Tommy Sullivan, got more heart than any man I've ever fought. You've been fighting an opponent that I couldn't beat. You've been fighting it for 3 years. And you ain't quit yet. That makes you tougher than George Foreman. Tougher than Joe Frazier. Tougher than me. The entire arena was silent except for the sound of people crying. So you take this belt, Ali continued, and you remember what it means. It means you're a champion. It means you got heart. It means you're a fighter. And no matter what happens, no matter how hard things get, you're going to keep fighting. Because that's what champions do. We fight. We don't quit. Ever. Tommy looked up at Ali, and in a voice that was stronger than it should have been said, I promise. I won't quit. That's my boy, Ali said. That's my champion. After the ceremony, after the crowd had finally stopped cheering, Ali carried Tommy back to his wheelchair himself. He sat with the boy and his mother in a quiet corner of the arena, away from the cameras. Mr. Ali, Margaret Sullivan said, her voice thick with emotion, I don't know how to thank you. You gave my son something tonight that no doctor could give him. You gave him dignity. You made him feel strong. He is strong, Ali said simply. Strongest fighter I ever met. Tommy, exhausted but still wearing the championship belt over his wheelchair, looked up at Ali. Will you come visit me? At the hospital. Ali's face didn't change, but Angelo Dundee, standing nearby, saw something flicker in the champion's eyes. Pain. The knowledge of a promise he might not be able to keep. I'll try, champ, Ali said. I'll do my best. Promise? Tommy asked. And here, Muhammad Ali, the man who'd stood in front of the world and predicted the round he'd knock out opponents, who'd never back down from any challenge, who'd face down the U.S. government rather than compromise his beliefs, hesitated. Because he knew. He'd seen enough sick children to know. 2 weeks, the doctors had said. Maybe less. And Ali had a training camp starting in 3 days. He had obligations, commitments, a schedule booked months in advance. But he looked at Tommy's face, at the hope burning in those eyes, and he couldn't say no. I promise, Ali said. Muhammad Ali left Madison Square Garden that night, carrying a weight heavier than any championship belt. 2 days after Christmas, he drove 3 hours from his training camp in Pennsylvania to St. Jude's Hospital in Manhattan. He didn't tell the media. He didn't bring cameras. He walked into Tommy Sullivan's hospital room carrying a bag of gifts. Boxing gloves signed by every champion he could reach, photos, a professional robe with Tommy the Tiger embroidered on the back. Tommy was weaker than he'd been on Christmas Eve. The exertion in the ring had taken a toll. But when Ali walked in, the boy's face lit up. They spent 2 hours together. Ali told stories about his fights, taught Tommy some basic techniques, and most importantly, he listened. He listened to Tommy talk about what he'd learned from watching Ali fight. About courage, about dignity, about fighting when every logical reason says you should quit. You taught me that being strong ain't about your muscles, Tommy said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's about your heart, about not letting fear win. Ali visited 3 more times over the next week. Each visit, Tommy was weaker. Each visit, Ali stayed longer. His managers grew concerned about the training time he was missing. I made a promise, Ali told them. A champion keeps his promises. Tommy Sullivan died on January 9th, 1975, 15 days after his night in Madison Square Garden. He was buried wearing the robe Ali had given him. In his small hands, folded across his chest, they placed a photograph from Christmas Eve. Tommy standing in the ring, championship belt around his waist, Muhammad Ali kneeling beside him. The championship belt itself, Ali's actual WBC belt from Kinshasa, stayed with the Sullivan family. Ali never asked for it back. The story of that Christmas Eve spread slowly, then became legendary. Other athletes began doing similar events, visiting sick children, making time in impossible schedules. Madison Square Garden began hosting an annual Christmas Eve charity boxing event dedicated to children fighting terminal illnesses. But the biggest impact was on Muhammad Ali himself. Something changed in him after Tommy Sullivan died. In interviews for years afterward, whenever Ali was asked about his proudest moment in boxing, he'd mention his victories over Liston, Foreman, and Frazier. But then he'd pause and add, but the proudest I ever been was Christmas Eve 1974, when a 12-year-old boy named Tommy Sullivan beat me in that ring. He showed me what it really means to be a champion. Angelo Dundee wrote in his autobiography, I trained Ali for over 20 years. I saw him win and lose world championships. But I never saw him as vulnerable as he was that Christmas Eve. Because in that ring, he wasn't fighting an opponent he could beat with his hands. The only thing he could do was give Tommy Sullivan one moment, one perfect moment, where he felt strong, felt powerful, felt like a champion. That night, I saw Muhammad Ali at his greatest. Not as a boxer, as a human being. Years later, when Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, when his own body began to betray him, he thought often about Tommy Sullivan, about what Tommy had taught him that Christmas Eve, that strength isn't about what your body can do. It's about what your spirit refuses to give up. In 1996, when Ali was chosen to light the Olympic flame in Atlanta, his hands shaking so badly that many people wondered if he'd be able to hold the torch, he remembered Tommy. Remembered a 12-year-old boy who'd thrown punches with arms that could barely lift, who'd stood in a boxing ring when he could barely stand at all, who'd refused to let his dying body define him. Ali lit that Olympic flame with shaking hands, and the world saw courage. But Ali knew the truth. He was just doing what Tommy Sullivan had taught him, refusing to quit, refusing to let weakness win, fighting until the very end. The championship belt that Ali gave Tommy Sullivan remained with the Sullivan family for decades. Margaret Sullivan kept it in a place of honor in her home, a reminder of the night her son had felt strong, had felt like a champion. In 2016, when Muhammad Ali died, Margaret Sullivan, now in her 70s, sent the belt back to Ali's family with a note. This belongs with the greatest champion who ever lived. Not because he won it in the ring, but because he gave it away to a dying child. Thank you for lending us your husband, your father, your friend. He saved my son's life in the only way that mattered. He made his last days meaningful. Ali's family donated the belt to the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, where it hangs today with a plaque. This championship belt was won by Muhammad Ali on October 30th, 1974, when he defeated George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire. He gave it away on December 24th, 1974, to 12-year-old Tommy Sullivan, who defeated Ali in a Christmas Eve exhibition at Madison Square Garden. Tommy fought leukemia for 3 years before passing away on January 9th, 1975. Ali said Tommy was the toughest opponent he ever faced. This belt reminds us that being a champion isn't about how many fights you win. It's about how much heart you show when winning is impossible. Muhammad Ali fought many battles in his life. He fought for his heavyweight title. He fought for his religious beliefs. He fought against racism and injustice. And eventually, he fought against Parkinson's disease. But on Christmas Eve 1974, Muhammad Ali learned something that would define the rest of his life. He learned that the greatest victories don't happen when you're strong. They happen when you make someone else feel strong. The most important fights aren't the ones you win. They're the ones where you give someone else the courage to keep fighting. Tommy Sullivan spent 15 more days on Earth after that Christmas Eve. 15 days where he told everyone about the night he beat Muhammad Ali. 15 days where he felt like a champion. 15 days where cancer didn't define him, courage did. And Muhammad Ali spent the rest of his life trying to give other people what he'd given Tommy. Moments of strength, moments of dignity, moments where they felt like champions, even when the world told them they were defeated. Because that's what the greatest champions do. They don't just win fights. They make other people believe they can win their own fights. That Christmas Eve in Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people watched a boxing exhibition. But what they really saw was the true meaning of championship. Not the belt, not the victories, not the fame, but the willingness to use your strength to lift someone else up. Muhammad Ali gave away his championship belt that night, but he gained something infinitely more valuable. He gained the knowledge that being the greatest meant being great enough to make others feel great too. Tommy Sullivan died 15 days later, but the lesson he taught Muhammad Ali, the lesson about heart, courage, and fighting when winning is impossible, that lesson lived on. It lived on in every charity event Ali attended, in every sick child he visited, in every moment he took from his impossible schedule to make someone else feel seen, valued, important. And it lives on today in the story of a Christmas Eve when the heavyweight champion of the world fought his most important fight, not against another boxer, but against the reality that some battles can't be won with fists. All you can do is make sure that the people fighting those battles know they're not fighting alone, that someone sees their courage, that someone recognizes their strength, that someone believes they're champions. Muhammad Ali gave Tommy Sullivan a championship belt that night, but Tommy Sullivan gave Muhammad Ali something more valuable: the understanding that true greatness isn't measured in victories. It's measured in the hearts you touch, the spirits you lift, and the courage you inspire in others. That's the real story of Christmas Eve 1974. Not about a fight, but about what it truly means to be the greatest.